Hanoka, a typical high school student, believes he won't ever have a girlfriend because he's not cool, rich, or smart, just like my friend. However, his life takes a sudden turn when he discovers magic and monsters. Surprisingly, he gets the chance to date the hottest girl in school, Ayaka, who happens to be the principal's daughter, so our MC wants to fulfill his school fantasies. Hanoka's only connection to Ayaka is that they ride the same bus and sit next to each other in class. Despite their proximity, they've never spoken, and it seems like they inhabit different worlds, with everyone gravitating toward Ayaka and Hanoka feeling almost invisible. One day, Hanoka accidentally drops his eraser, and Ayaka kindly picks it up for him. However, this gesture doesn't sit well with Ayaka's fan club. They pull Hanoka out of his class, push him to the ground, and start beating him. They warn him not to let Ayaka do anything for him again. After facing a beating, Hanoka goes to the teacher's office for his day duty. However, a girl approaches him and takes the papers from his hand. While this might seem like the beginning of a romance anime, it's not. She's just a member of Ayaka's group and wants to keep Hanoka away from Ayaka, who is also on day duty. In the end, Hanoka's school days often revolve around being a side character in Ayaka's story. One day, after classes, Hanoka walks down to take out the trash and ponders the meaning of his life. As he does, he notices a sinister-looking bunny toy in the trash and decides to investigate. On the toy's belly, he finds a note predicting clean weather but warning about the possibility of some school buildings falling. He initially dismisses it as a childish prank but is shocked when a massive shadow appears, revealing the school's clock tower collapsing. In that moment, he contemplates whether he'll be transported to another world as a hero surrounded by beautiful girls. Sadly, he reflects on never even having held hands with a girl in his current life. The building crashes on top of him, seemingly ending this anime, but, however, when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in Ayaka's arms, who is dressed like a witch. Panicking, Ayaka warns him to stop moving or he might fall. Confused, he looks down to see them standing in midair over a broom. In the distance, a cat-eared girl speculates if Ayaka is a workshop witch and then summons two large armored rabbit toy soldiers to attack. Ayaka swiftly tosses Hanoka in the air, dodges the attack, burns down the toys with a fire spell, and gracefully catches Hanoka, giving him a close-up shot of an unexpected and magical experience. The rabbit toy soldiers rise again and charge straight at them with swords. Ayaka responds by shooting fireballs at them and then gets into close combat using her broom and spells. Despite Ayaka's advice to stay close, Hanoka, being the fool he is, does the opposite. He turns around to see a cat-eared girl waving at him from behind the building, urging him to come over for safety. Thinking the cat-eared girl is Ayaka's friend, Hanoka starts running toward her, only to find himself surrounded by an army of toy soldiers. They quickly restrain him, and one soldier with an axe approaches, ready to make him the successor to nearly headless Nick in the next Harry Potter movie. Hanoka wonders if it's all a dream, but Ayaka jumps in, setting the soldiers on fire and saving him like the true protagonist she should have been. Still convinced it's a dream, Hanoka tries to impress Ayaka by saying she looks beautiful even in his dreams, doubting she would give him a second of her time to save him like a Sailor Moon Harry Potter hybrid. Ayaka assures him it's her mission to protect him, and he shouldn't worry. When Hanoka asks why, Ayaka replies that he is her princess. This revelation makes Hanoka question his gender, but Ayaka playfully reminds him that there are still only two genders for now. Ayaka insists on protecting him, but he notices some of her hair is on fire. Worried that he's the reason she's hurt, he asks why she covered for him, blaming himself for being foolish and getting tricked despite her warning to stay close. He admits it's his fault her hair got burned, considering it a gift from God. However, he stops mid-sentence, realizing he's inadvertently become a pervert and started to simp for her. Despite years of being bullied by Ayaka's admirers, he finds himself unwittingly joining the dark side. As he reflects on his disappointment in himself, he notices one of the toy soldiers getting up to attack Ayaka from behind. Hanoka jumps in front of Ayaka, thinking he is a Batman but taking the hit himself, hoping to look cool and say that his body moved on its own. Comment guys what kind of a Batman he is. However, he falls unconscious before delivering his line. Ayaka, witnessing him getting hurt, walks up and gives him a soft hug. Noting the softness of the hug is intentional, now I get it, why my Batman falls suddenly. It's clear that Ayaka becomes angered by seeing him hurt. She regrets not turning the toy soldiers to ashes initially and decides to stand up, using her ultimate spell, Million Clover. With a massive burst of fire element, she completely annihilates all the enemies. Later that afternoon, Hanoka wakes up in Ayaka's private room at school. Ayaka assures him that it was not a dream and promises to explain everything another day. They walk back home together, and Ayaka shares that, for now, all he needs to know is that it's her duty to protect him because he is her master. Confused by this statement, Hanoka decides to walk beside her in silence, and they don't talk for some time. A few days later, everything seems fine and back to normal. However, this time, instead of being a background character, Hanoka starts attracting jealousy and hatred from others. This change occurs when Ayaka decides to sit beside him on the morning bus to school. As they walk together to class, Hanoka feels the hostile stares and fears for his safety if he stays close to Ayaka any longer. He pretends to have stomach issues and rushes outside, only to be caught by the bullies' squad. The bullies grab him by the collar, instructing him to know his place and prepare to beat him up. In a surprising turn, Ayaka intervenes. She skillfully makes a bow out of Hanoka's tie and declares that she will burn anyone who tries to hurt him again, putting an end to the bullying. Later that afternoon, during lunchtime, Ayaka sits down with Hanoka and some girls from her fan club. She feeds him with her own hands, proudly mentioning that she made the food herself. Although Hanoka feels happy with this special treatment, he can't shake the feeling of being unwelcome amidst the 20 other girls surrounding him. Believing he's ruining their enjoyment, he stands up and declares he'll go away to eat alone before running off. Hearing this, Ayaka becomes angry and sets everyone's lunch on fire, looking down on them. On the other hand, Hanoka feels remorse for being rude to her and takes a walk around the courtyard where the building fell. He notices that everything seems back to normal, with no apparent damage. Just then, Hanoka turns around to see the cat-eared girl standing beside him. She reveals that the falling building was all an illusion and states that she has finally confirmed that he is a powerless individual. In other way, she is calling him useless. Coming to him unnoticed, she walks up while transforming into her witch gear and introduces herself as Tanpopo of the Tower Witches. She declares her intention to kidnap him and calls out her soldiers. However, Ayaka arrives in the midst of the situation and takes Hanoka with her, interrupting Tanpopo's plans. Tanpopo says that she was waiting for Ayaka to come and then orders her army of toy soldiers to attack them. This time, it's more than a few normal toy soldiers, and they all run Ayaka through with spears and swords from all sides. After the clash, Hanoka opens his eyes on the ground and notices Ayaka covering him with more wounds than he can count. She asks if he's fine, and he wonders how she's even alive. Feeling guilty for being weak, he expresses sadness and promises to believe in her. He suggests calling an ambulance, but Ayaka, claiming to be made of fire, reassures him and tells him to close his eyes and stay put. Using her magic, Ayaka sends all the soldiers flying and burns them into ashes. She walks up to Tanpopo, holding Hanoka in her arms like a princess. Ayaka threatens Tanpopo, telling her she's going to roast her furry ass and blasts her with a powerful fire spell. However, Tanpopo manages to call her soldiers and narrowly escapes with her ass on fire. After that, Ayaka tells Hanoka to open his eyes, and to his surprise, everything is back to normal, clean and clear without any damage. With that, they both walk back home and call it a day. The following morning, 5 new students transfer into their school, and surprise surprise, it's none other than Tanpopo and her fellow Tower Witches. A few days pass, and Hanoka keeps asking Ayaka to tell him the truth about all this witchcraft stuff and why he's being targeted by Tanpopo and the others. One morning, he decides to persistently ask her until she tells him. Noting that Ayaka didn't ride the same bus as him that day, he gets off at the school entrance, changes his shoes, and walks through his classroom, only to find Ayaka having intense interactions with the new students. Confused, he looks up at the class board and realizes he is actually at the Torture Society Club. Instead of questioning why such a club exists at school, he asks Ayaka how he ended up there and why. Ayaka reveals that she cast a spell on him to subconsciously walk there instead of their classroom so they could meet up. Afterward, she turns back towards the tied-up girls and declares that this is a witch hunt. She explains that she decided to get rid of them because they could be a threat to him. Wondering if that's true, Hanoka looks at them struggling for their lives. He urges Ayaka to at least remove the gags from their mouths so they can speak, and Ayaka complies. She reveals that she wanted to finish them off early, but one of them escaped, so she used the others as bait to lure her out. Hanoka walks up to Tanpopo and asks her why they are targeting him. Tanpopo responds that it's no surprise Miss Goody Two-Shoes didn't tell him anything, and bluntly states that she's after his body, particularly the white stuff inside him. Hearing this, Hanoka starts blushing, unsure if he heard correctly. However, Ayaka tells him not to take everything his enemies say at face value. Tanpopo questions if they should be so easygoing, as they are yet to capture their last member. Just then, some kind of black, slimy liquid starts dripping from the ceiling, soon engulfing both of them from inside. From the slimy liquid, Mei emerges and sets her friends free. After that, she kidnaps Hanoka and phases through the floor, leading to the room beneath them. She leaves her 4 friends to deal with Ayaka. Mei starts reveling in her successful escape with her target but forgets that she's more of a minor villain and comic relief rather than the main antagonist of the plot. Ayaka destroys the floor, and as the other 4 witches lie defeated on the ground, she descends and approaches Mei. However, Mei warns her to slow down, threatening to have her wolf pet bite Hanuka's neck if Ayaka doesn't stop. Ayaka reassures him, saying she'll deal with the woman quickly, but Mei, with Hanoka as a hostage, stands up. Mei makes her pet bite into Hanoka's neck to threaten Ayaka. Instead of being frightened, Ayaka sets Mei on fire, kicks her away, and allows Hanoka to escape. Surprisingly, Hanoka's neck is unharmed, while the wolf's bite wound appears on Ayaka's neck. Witnessing this, Mei makes her escape and her friends retreat. Later that afternoon, Hanoka opens his eyes in Ayaka's schoolroom and notices her wearing a scarf around her neck in the middle of summer. She apologizes to him, explaining that she wanted him to live a normal, peaceful life. However, if things continue as they are, he will keep getting targeted by the Tower Witches. Ayaka suggests that to restore his normal life, they must take action themselves and defeat the mastermind behind all this. The only problem is that she doesn't know who the mastermind is. Hearing all this, Hanoka reflects on the situation and realizes that it's his fault that Ayaka got hurt and is hiding her wound with a scarf. He asks her to tell him everything and make him her apprentice because he doesn't want her to fight alone anymore. Meanwhile, inside a coffee and dessert shop, the school's headmistress and Ayaka's mother, Kazumi, meets up with her old rival and villain, Kronwar. After a short 130 years, Kronwar informs her that she found out that Medusa's students picked a fight with her people and suggests that she might want to join in the fun. Later that weekend, Hanoka receives a call from Ayaka to meet her outside. Thinking it might be a date, in reality, she is about to reveal the truth about witches and everything as he had asked. She mentions that they will go to the school, but on their way, they make a stop at a food shop. While walking to their destination, Ayaka tells him a story about witches and explains that there are two types in this world, the workshop witches and the tower witches. Workshop witches are the protectors of the world, creating workshops in places where people gather and building cities. Their job is to ensure that magic is not used for evil, opening workshops in different sectors and living there, hence the name workshop witches. On the other hand, tower witches are selfish individuals who don't abide by any laws. They use magic for personal gain and often cause harm to others. Ayaka warns that if he were to fall into their hands, the world would come to an end and everyone would die. After this conversation, they go inside the food shop to take a breather. After ordering their food, one of the waitresses starts talking to Ayaka in a high-pitched voice. Ayaka keeps glaring at her with anger but listens to everything she says. The waitress reveals that Kronwar is in town and more tower witches are coming. Hanoka notices that the girl is actually their school's student council vice president and also a workshop witch like Ayaka. Once Ayaka finishes her drink, they leave and head to a shopping mall to buy some clothes. While waiting for Ayaka to finish her shopping, Hanoka notices a cute girl helping a lost child. He walks up to her, and the girl looks at him, taking out her notes to confirm that he's the same guy in the pictures. However, she suddenly kicks the lost child away like an NPC and jumps over Hanoka with a sword, revealing herself to be a tower witch. Her friends join in, and they attack Ayaka. Ayaka responds by setting them on fire and jumping forward to save her princess boy. One of the tower witches uses an American-style gun technique, shooting at them with a pistol. In response, Ayaka utilizes a Batman-style bulletproof cape technique, deflecting all the bullets. After that, she stands up and performs Ace's fire pistol attack, wiping the floor with her crispy burned adversaries. With that, Ayaka walks up to them, carrying her princess boy in her arms, and lets the defeated tower witches escape like Agent 7. After finishing their business at the shopping mall, they continue walking to the school. Hanoka apologizes to Ayaka for getting her caught up in all this trouble. He suggests that it might be better to seal him away or lock him up, but Ayaka reassures him not to worry about those things, and she will protect him forever. She encourages him to work hard at his lessons because being her apprentice won't be easy. Hearing this, Hanoka becomes happy and resolves to grow stronger. Eventually, they reach the school, and Ayaka reveals that the school is, in fact, one of the workshops. She takes him to the headmistress's office and introduces him to her mother, Kazumi. Kazumi scolds Ayaka for breaking stuff at the mall, questioning the value of a workshop witch who destroys others' property. However, she then informs Hanoka that it's a custom at the workshop for witches to introduce their apprentices to their master on their first day, which is why Ayaka brought him there. The next day, Ayaka takes Hanoka out for some training, and on their way, they are ambushed by Tampopo and her Team Rocket. Ayaka asks if it's a good idea to attack her since she's practically invincible. But Tampopo insists on going with a rapid stream formation, charging straight at Ayaka with no strategy. Ayaka tells Hanoka to watch closely and then effortlessly sends the attackers flying, reminiscent of their Pokémon counterparts soaring into the sky. Unfortunately, Hanoka seems to learn nothing from this encounter. After the confrontation, they return to their school, and Hanoka opens his locker only to be inundated by a tsunami of death threats and hate mail. Someone even threw a dead voodoo doll of him inside. Ayaka notes that it must be the doing of her admirers and reassures him not to worry as they won't harm him any longer. However, despite her assurance, he can clearly sense the hateful glares from everyone around him. Yet, he gets to sit next to her, get taught by her for exams, gets paired up with her during sports, and even gets to walk home from school with the princess they all admire. After school, Hanoka prepares to practice some magic, but Ayaka walks with him to the bus station and suggests taking a break today, knowing how tired he is. They board the bus to ride home, and on their way, Ayaka notices a flying magical fish in front of her. When she looks at the bus destination, it changes from the next bus stop to dead end. Alarmed, Ayaka gets up and turns around to find Kronwar sitting in the back seat. The entire bus is empty, and even the driver is gone, with the bus now running on Ayaka's magic. Ayaka instructs Hanoka to stay put and faces Kronwar, who walks up and introduces herself. Ayaka prepares to shoot a fire spell, but Kronwar halts her movements using her magic dictatorship. Kronwar then uses a powerful spell on Ayaka, but to her surprise, there isn't even a single scratch on Ayaka. Hanoka, unaware of Ayaka's strength, idiotically stands in front of her as if he's defending her. Kronwar looks at Hanoka's foolish attempt and compliments his stupidity, telling him that no matter how many times anyone tries to kill Ayaka, they won't be able to harm her. She then walks forward and casually stabs Hanoka in the stomach. Hanoka falls to his knees and starts crying, but Kronwar instructs him to stop acting as if it hurts and to get back on his feet. Confused, Hanoka wonders what she's saying but then realizes that it really doesn't hurt and his body is unharmed. Just then, Ayaka falls to the ground and Hanoka notices that she is bleeding from the same place he was stabbed. Kronwar explains that this is due to a special ability called damage transfer, which makes it so that any injury on him is instead transferred to her as long as they are close to each other. She further clarifies that this ability stems from a contract she has signed with him, allowing her to use the power within him to make herself an invincible witch. However, in return, she must protect him from all harm. Kronwar then tells Hanoka that if he wants to save Ayaka, he needs to simply give her more of his power, referring to the spirit inside him. It is more like to the nine-tailed fox in Naruto. She gives him a magical candy and instructs him to swallow it if he wants to unleash his real power. However, she attempts to force feed it to him herself. Ayaka, not willing to let a shady pervert steal her first kiss from her pet, unleashes a burst of green flames, making Kronwar fall back. After that, Kronwar tells Hanoka that for a little while, she will transform into something that she is not and takes some magic from him. In a blaze of green flames and dragon light power, Ayaka transforms into the hottest version of herself, instantly overpowering Kronwar. She pierces through Kronwar's barrier alongside her throat, forcing Kronwar to retreat and leave them both behind at the bus stop. Hanoka wakes up first, noticing that Ayaka's wound is healed, but she's not waking up. Concerned, he takes her to the hospital, where the nurse reassures him that she is just tired and will wake up soon. After that, Hanoka goes back home and notices a wrapped candy inside his pocket. He realizes that it's the magical orb that Kronwar was trying to feed him. Deciding to keep it hidden from Ayaka, he puts it inside his drawer, thinking it might be useful in the future. He also ponders about what Kronwar said regarding Ayaka making a contract with him, wondering if it means that he knew her before meeting her at the school. The next day, Ayaka books the whole gymnasium for their training. She provides Hanoka with his own witch class gear and starts explaining its features. She instructs him to try jumping high, and to his surprise, he feels much lighter and is able to jump almost as high as the gymnasium's roof. After the jump, she catches him princess style on his way down and then tells him to try picking her up in the same way. Hanoka is surprised to find that she is really light, and she explains that wearing the robe makes their bodies light. Next, she holds her right hand forward, twists her wrist a bit, and a magical broom appears in her hands. She tells him that the brooms are stored inside the capes and can be summoned by doing the gesture. Hanoka tries to do the same but manages to only summon his disappointment when he fails to get the broom out. Just then, Ayaka's alarm rings and she says that their time is up. Suddenly, a lot of students open the door and walk inside for their practice. Hanoka starts panicking, telling Ayaka that they should hide or others will see them in these odd get-ups. To his surprise, no one pays attention to him, and he wonders if he has become so transparent that no one even bothers to look at him. Ayaka explains that it's thanks to the robes they are wearing, which have a charm preventing others from noticing them. People also subconsciously avoid them when walking. After that, they walk out, and Ayaka asks Hanoka if he's afraid of heights. She then grabs him, rides on her broom, and takes them far up into the sky. She explains that they will practice flying like this until he can draw out his broom. Ayaka mentions that normally, workshop witches patrol the area like this to ensure everything is alright in their sector. Besides, at any given moment, there are 5 strong witches in their high school who keep patrolling to make sure the school is safe. After flying for a while and even taking a nap, Ayaka flies them both back to the school. On their way, Hanoka stops her and points down, saying that a kid is being bullied and robbed, and they should intervene. However, Ayaka tells him that it is the job of the police, and as witches, their responsibility is to protect the town from evil witches. They don't interfere with the matters of normal people, as they must never let them find out about their existence. Hanoka doesn't buy the excuse and summons his broom, jumping down. He barely saves the situation from ending disastrously by managing not to fall to his death and then rams straight into the bullies, making them fall to the ground like a car accident. They retaliate by getting on top of him and deciding to beat him up, but Ayaka arrives in time and burns them up to a crisp using her magic. Hanoka questions her about the whole not attacking civilians rule, and she explains that they were witches, which is why they were able to notice him despite wearing the robe. It turns out the girl being robbed is Hanoka's younger sister Cassie's friend from the same school, and she's not a witch, so she didn't see any of the magic happen. Meanwhile, in the city of Rothenburg, we see Medusa, who is under the tightest security the city can provide. Somehow, she manages to break the seal and escapes from prison. The first people she decides to visit are none other than her esteemed students, Team Tanpao Rocket. But before she makes contact with them, we see Tanpopo and her friends sitting in a restaurant, brainstorming a plan to capture Hanoka and defeat Ayaka. It's a tough problem because one of them is practically invincible, and the other constantly produces pheromones that keep her with him like a pet. During their discussion, Rin suggests that they stop attacking Ayaka altogether and wait for a moment when Hanoka is alone to capture him. They decide to go with this plan, but just before they leave, Kronwar approaches them and expresses her interest in joining their little scheme. The next morning, Hanoka wakes up and goes down to freshen up and get ready for school. His sister, Kasumi, greets him and helps fix his bed hair with a comb and a hairdryer. While doing so, she asks him about the call he received from a girl last weekend. Hanoka doesn't want to reveal that the hottest girl in their school calls him master, so he decides to lie and says that it was just a classmate using the calling system and the girl's number was before his. He claims she called to say they were going to have a fun day on Monday. Kasumi questions why he went out in a rush after receiving the call, and Hanoka starts sweating. He makes up another excuse, but she catches on and warns him that she can burn his hair off with a hairdryer on the maximum setting. Kasumi then admits that she knows he went out with Ayaka and mentions hearing rumors because they go to the same school. She expresses frustration as she often gets bullied due to her brother hogging the attention of the princess. Kasumi asks Hanoka about the nature of their relationship, but before he can respond, their mom, Kamachi, calls them for breakfast. Kasumi lets him off the hook, saying she'll talk to him later that night. Meanwhile, Ayaka is waiting for Hanoka at the bus stop and gets ambushed by 3 witches from Tanpopo's gang. After finishing their breakfast, Hanoka remembers that he had to meet up with Ayaka early that day and starts running to the bus stop. While running, he gets tripped over by a trap set up by Tanpopo using her rabbit toy soldiers. They capture him, put him on the ground, and Tanpopo informs him that her other friends are currently beating Ayaka because they know her weakness. It turns out that Korra told them about the secret behind Ayaka's invincibility and how separating her from Hanoka will make her weaker. Just then, 2 soldiers get launched into space by a massive leg. Tanpopo wonders where they went but then looks up to notice a giant bear toy playing with her soldiers in its hands. It turns out that this is all Kasumi's doing, and she's revealed to be a workshop witch as well. Tanpopo is left surprised by this unexpected turn of events. Tanpopo becomes furious at Kasumi for disrupting their plan, which was going well for once. She takes out her massive soldier, initiating a battle between 2 titans, the bunny and the bear. In this colossal showdown, the bear titan initially gains the upper hand, but the bunny strikes back with its charming puppy eyes, surprising the opponent with an attack on its eyes. The fierce fight continues with wrestling moves, slams, throws, and rebounds. The bear attempts to slam the rabbit into the ground and tosses it into the wires. However, the rabbit rebounds stronger with spiked gloves and poisonous gas. In the end, both titans land a left hook on each other, but the bear manages to land it first and pushes the rabbit back to the ground. Suddenly, a wild skeletal T-Rex enters the scene and tackles the bear. Kasumi turns to observe this unexpected Pokémon-like creature and realizes it's Rin with her undead pet. Tanpopo and Rin surround Kasumi, setting up a 2 versus 1 scenario, but Kasumi has a secret technique up her sleeve. After growing her bear into a colossal titan, Rin proceeds to squash the bunny and the skeletal creature under her foot, causing more destruction than I do in GTA 5. She climbs down from her bear and approaches Hanoka, who's been watching the scene and wishing he had some popcorn. Hanoka asks her what all of this is about, and she turns the question back to him, asking who protected him all these years when the princess wasn't around. Upon hearing the princess, Hanoka takes her hands and suggests they go save Ayaka. However, Kasumi disagrees, stating that Ayaka, the powerful monster, doesn't need saving but rather salvation. She points at Akka, who's comfortably sitting on the bear's paw, enjoying her book. Ayaka comes down, and Hanoka rushes to her, expressing gratitude for her safety and for fighting the witches on his behalf. However, Kasumi interrupts and suggests that Hanoka should be thanking her instead, as they had an agreement for Ayaka to protect him during holidays and weekends while Kasumi takes care of him during the bus rides and at school. It becomes clear that Kasumi had lied in the morning about not knowing Ayaka and being bullied. She teases Hanoka, claiming it's her job as his younger sister. Kasumi informs Ayaka that the headmistress mentioned over 30 tower witches in the town, yet they haven't made a move. This indicates that something significant is about to happen, so they need to be on guard. In the meantime, Kazumi turns on the TV and sees that half the city is destroyed because of Kasumi and Tenpopo's fight. She's worried about how much money she'll have to spend to fix everything. Back in the city, Ayaka suggests that they should move in together to protect Hanoka all the time. Meanwhile, Kronwar is planning something and tells her Croco Boy to capture every tower witch in the city and bring them to her base. At the same time, Kazumi gets a call from Rothenberg, who informs her about Medusa breaking out. The next day, Ayaka goes to meet Kum's mother to ask if she can keep Hanoka with her all the time. To their surprise, Kamachi, Hanoka's mother, immediately agrees and starts sharing a story from her own high school days. She talks about how she became friends with a strong girl known as Dragon Tooth, who turns out to be Ayaka's mother, Kazumi. They became such good friends that they planned to marry each other, but since it wasn't 2023 yet, they had to marry men and promise to arrange marriages for their children instead. This means that Ayaka and Hanoka were engaged even before they were born. Upon hearing all this, Kasumi refuses to let her big sister go away. Kamachi advises her to mature and stop insisting on having him do everything for her all day. However, she insists that it's her right as his younger sister. When all else fails, Kamachi pushes her to the ground, holds her down, and instructs Hanoka to pack his things and run away. After that, they both walk out, and Ayaka asks him if he is okay with living alone with her. He replies that there is no guy in the world who wouldn't want to live with her. What do you think? What would you do with Ayaka? Tell me in the comments. She then expresses her belief that someone with powers close to theirs orchestrated their current situation, and it seems all planned. Soon, her car arrives, and the driver opens the door for them. Hanoka realizes that being the daughter of the headmistress means she is extremely wealthy. They soon reach her towering mansion, and upon entering, they are greeted by numerous maids. Ayaka mentions that her room is on one of the upper floors, so they take the elevator. As they ascend, Hanoka wonders who lives in a 41-story house. Upon reaching Ayaka's room, they find the three maids waiting for them turned into stone, with Medusa standing behind them, expressing impatience. Ayaka instructs Hanoka to stay on the 12th floor, closing the elevator door behind her. Ayaka transforms into her fiery mage battle form and engages in a fierce fight with the Snake Lady. Meanwhile, on the other side of the door, Hanoka wonders why Ayaka told him to go away, as in the past, she always wanted him close. He speculates that it might be because the enemy is formidable, thinking that if he goes too far away, Ayaka might lose her invincibility. He decides to do what he's best at, not following orders, because guys, he thinks he is a Batman. Rate this Batman in comment. At that moment, the elevator's door melts down and Ayaka falls to the floor. She instructs Hanoka to take out his broom and escape because, during fights, he's only as good as cannon fodder that ends up as collateral damage. However, Medusa has different plans and uses her curse to turn Ayaka into stone. Hanoka pleads with her to release Ayaka, promising to do whatever she says. Medusa rejects the offer, stating she's not as foolish as him. Hanoka recalls the candy in his pocket, brought with him when they decided to live together. He takes it out, swallows it, breaking the seal, and a white substance inside him is released. Suddenly, a white-haired vampire-like beauty appears in the room and introduces herself as the White Princess, Evermillion. Medusa charges forward directly at Evermillion, but Evermillion retaliates by blasting her out of the building, taking down a part of the structure with the sheer force of her attack. Kazumi gazes out of the window to unwind after a taxing day at work and is just in time to witness her multi-million-dollar empire getting blasted into smithereens. Suspecting Medusa's involvement, she contacts her assistant and instructs them to gather every witch in town to hunt down the snake. On the other hand, Evermillion informs Hanoka that Ayaka turned to stone because he lacked belief in her strength. To break the curse, he must reaffirm the trust and feelings he has for her. In simpler terms, he needs to kiss her, akin to Snow White awakening from her sleep. After delivering this message, Evermillion vanishes, advising him to stay safe enough that he doesn't need to call on her often. Just then, Medusa returns, accompanied by her students, Team Tampao Rocket. Hanoka kisses Ayaka, breaking the stone seal, and joins her in the fight against Medusa, sticking with her like a determined cockroach throughout the ensuing battle. Ayaka effortlessly blasts Team Rocket away with a single attack and then engages in a one-on-one battle with Medusa. The two witches fight on equal terms, and despite Medusa's attempts to turn Ayaka into stone again, Ayaka breaks through with the combined power of firepower, love, and plot armor. Later that night, he wakes up in the school's nurse's office and finds Ayaka sitting beside him. Anxious, he asks if everything was just a nightmare, but Ayaka confirms that it was all true. She moves the curtains aside, revealing Medusa and her students resting on the beds beside theirs. Hanoka starts to freak out, but Ayaka reassures him, promising to explain later and mentioning that they won't be attacking anymore. Ayaka puts the curtains back in place, kisses Hanoka, and says that she is returning the favor and also do some fun in the night. Later on, they decide to return to Hanoka's house as Ayaka's place was literally blown up. Kasumi goes out for the night to respond to Kazune's summons. Meanwhile, Ayaka and Hanoka meet up with his mom back home. The next morning, Kasumi returns home after a night-long search for Medusa, unsuccessful in her mission. She decides to visit Hanoka's room and walks in on Ayaka sitting on top of him, checking his seal. Kasumi gets upset upon learning that her mom allowed Ayaka to stay with him and begins speaking rudely at the breakfast table. Kazune can't handle it and becomes depressed. Hanoka scolds Kasumi for being a bad daughter and makes her apologize, but it's too late. Kasumi rolls up in her bed and refuses to talk to anyone. Hanoka calls her workplace, informing them that she's sick and won't be coming in, then heads to his school. Back at school, the student council and Ayaka's simping club are having a meeting. The president is frustrated that it's been 2 weeks since Hanoka became close with the princess and no one is doing anything about it. She turns to the vice president, who also refuses to intervene, advising her to calm down because Ayaka made it clear she won't tolerate anyone hurting Hanoka. Frustrated, the president confronts their advisor, the science teacher, Kayuyukaru sensei, telling him she knows he's only the advisor because he couldn't say no. She expresses her dissatisfaction with his lack of action, warning that if he doesn't do something about Hanoka, she and the student council will have him expelled. Later that morning, Kayuyukaru approaches Ayaka and her pet, informing them that he needs to discuss something important. He leads them to the science laboratory and addresses the issue directly. Kayuyukaru reveals that he is the student council's advisor and expresses concern that Hanoka is causing problems for him. He speculates that, as Hanoka transferred here in his second year of high school, he might not be aware of what Ayaka was like in her first year. Kayuyukaru goes on to explain that it's a school tradition during the Fall Culture Festival for all students to vote and select the most outstanding student who becomes their role model, known as the prince or princess. Candidates are chosen based on various criteria, including looks, grades, athletics, charisma, and the Dami Mommy factor. The problem arises when rumors start spreading about the selected student, particularly if a boy is involved. Hanoka attempts to defend Ayaka's reputation, but Kayuyukaru dismisses the importance of their real relationship, emphasizing that Ayaka belongs to the school, not to him. He asks Hanoka to stay away from her. Hanoka reflects sadly on the situation, but Ayaka encourages him to stop looking so sad. She explains that the tradition stems from a legend about an angel who descended from heaven to attend classes with regular people, placing the princess in a high position. Kayuyukaru confirms this hierarchy, which includes the headmistress, the princess, student council, teachers, and regular students. As the daughter of the headmistress, Ayaka already holds 2 top authoritative roles. However, the challenge lies in the potential consequences for Kayuyukaru if he disobeys the student council. Ayaka reassures him, stating that she has a plan and they need to accelerate it. Kayuyukaru expresses relief at Ayaka's assurance and shifts the focus to the real problem. Using a magical tool, he teleports Hanoka and himself into a different dimension. He presents a small orb, similar to the magical candy Kron gave Hanoka, explaining that it's a lesser copy. Hanoka wonders how Kayuyukaru knows about the candy, as he hasn't shared this information with anyone except Ayaka. Kayuyukaru reveals that they are there because Hanoka used one of these candies to summon the White Princess, who is sealed within him. He explains that there are a total of 5 seals, and one of them has already been broken. Due to this, he suspects that the headmistress will soon become his enemy. He reveals that the workshop headquarters entrusted him to her because she is an exceptionally strong witch, and thanks to her, he has been able to live freely. However, this was under the condition that the 5 seals remain untouched. Now that one has fallen off, he anticipates the other seals will start collapsing one by one, and there's no way to stop it. The only solution, he suggests, would be to seal Hanoka away using the headmistress of magic. Fortunately, she is currently occupied dealing with Medusa and is unaware of the seals. However, it's only a matter of time before she discovers them, along with the fact that they are hiding Medusa. He emphasizes that he only wants to help Hanoka and that if it weren't for the princess, he would have been his guardian. Kayuyukaru offers him the option to leave Ayaka and come with him instead. Hanoka doesn't even bother giving it a thought, and just then, Ayaka breaks through the dimensional barrier. She swiftly stabs Kayuyukaru into the ground and takes Hanoka away. Kayuyukaru, however, manages to survive by using substitution jutsu and escapes. After that, Ayaka takes Hanoka to the speaker room and instructs him to make an announcement for all students to gather at the gymnasium. Once everyone is assembled, she walks up on stage and, for the first time in the history of DOA, shows interest in the school's politics. Ayaka delivers a compelling speech about her concern for the school's future. She declares that she is stripping the student council president of their position election and appointing Hanoka as her hand-picked candidate for the new president. Ayaka then assumes the role of the vice president herself, making changes to the previous vice president and vice president positions. Later on, Hanoka gives an introductory speech to the student council committee. He acknowledges that he's aware not everyone likes him at the moment, but he expresses his commitment to proving his worth and working hard to earn the acceptance of everyone's hearts. Meanwhile, Kasumi is having none of Ayaka's domination over her brother complex, and she decides to take him back by force. She sets up an elaborate trap and follows them after school, catching them as they enter a toy shop. When Hanoka steps out alone for a breather, she seizes the opportunity and kidnaps him using her bear. Kasumi throws a car at Ayaka and puts her to sleep with some injections. Kasumi then activates the airplane mode on her bear, created by dismantling half of their house. She declares they will run into the woods and live happily alone. She mentions overhearing what the teacher told Hanoka about the headmistress becoming his enemy, and anticipates that her daughter will be as well. However, their plans are interrupted when they notice a massive shadow forming overhead. They look up to see a dragon flying over them, ridden by none other than the Flame Princess herself. Ayaka decides to assert her dominance as the real main character and starts shooting fire spells from above. Kasumi attempts to dodge the attacks, inadvertently destroying half the city. Eventually, they crash into a building and everyone falls down. Ayaka jumps down, saving them all by catching them and breaking their fall. She then takes them back home and puts them to sleep. Later that night, Hanoka wakes up and apologizes to Ayaka for his sister's actions, but Ayaka assures him that she doesn't mind. She acknowledges that Kasumi merely threw a car at her and put her to sleep with some comments. In fact, Ayaka admires Kasumi for being such a protective sister. She then playfully suggests if she should try acting like his little sister as well. Hanoka counters that, if anything, she would be his elder sister, and they spend the whole night playfully exploring this dynamic. Eventually, Ayaka becomes bored with it and falls asleep. Hanoka lets her rest in his bed. As he looks at their bags, he notices that the toys he bought for Ayaka and Kasumi got torn in their fight yesterday, making him feel sad about it. Meanwhile, Kasumi receives a call on her phone from their mother saying she is coming over to talk to Ayaka and her son. The next morning, Kazumi comes over and goes out with Kasumi and Komachi for some shopping. Ayaka wakes up early to prepare breakfast for Hanoka and herself. As Hanoka wakes up and sees her in the kitchen, he's captivated by how beautiful she looks. They sit down together and enjoy the breakfast. In the background, Tampopo and her gang, staying at their house alongside Medusa, plan to capture Hanoka. They discuss with Medusa about why they are so obedient to the princess. Medusa explains that they lost the battle fairly, and it's part of the rules to obey the winner. Moreover, as long as their goals align, she doesn't need to make a move until the right time. However, if they still want to try capturing Hanoka, they are welcome to do so when Ayaka is not around. Upon hearing this, they all walk upstairs outside Hanoka's room and wait for Ayaka to leave his side so they can carry out their plan. To their surprise, the princess doesn't sleep a wink and stays by his side all night. She then goes out to prepare breakfast. It appears that she doesn't need as much sleep as a normal human being, another fascinating fact about her. Back in the living room, Hanoka and Ayaka talk about Kazuni and his mom. As it starts raining, they decide to go out together to the laundry. Meanwhile, Kazuni and the others return and Ayaka goes out to greet them. Hanoka heads to the bathroom to dry himself off. However, when he enters, he finds Mei and the other girls walking out and accusing him of being a pervert. They end up in the main hall, drawing everyone's attention. Kazuni puts Kasumi and Komachi to sleep. Then, she tells Ayaka that they are going to capture them to make them reveal Medusa's whereabouts. Ayaka and Kazuni summon their brooms, but instead of moving forward, Ayaka turns around and clashes against her mother. She expresses that she can't let her capture them. Kazuni tells Hanoka to convince Ayaka to stop this selfish behavior and not let her be like this anymore. Hanoka thinks back on Kaiu Yukiru's words and realizes that Ayaka was really hiding Medusa and the others from her mother. He decides to believe in her and tells Kazuni that they can't let themselves be captured. Ayaka agrees and calls out to Medusa, telling her that they will go along with their agreement right now. Medusa gladly accepts and emerges from hiding, biting both Ayaka and Hanoka. This causes them to fuse, and Hanoka briefly falls unconscious, experiencing a vision that explains their past encounter when Medusa attacked them at Ayaka's house. During that incident, they formed a contract. Ayaka gained power to fight her mother, and Medusa obtained a new successor to transfer her powers into, taking the form of the princess herself. With this agreement in place, Ayaka promised to shelter Medusa and her students from her mother until the right time. However, Kazuni still doesn't understand why Medusa combined with Ayaka and blurts out some nonsense. Medusa mocks her, and a fierce battle ensues, with Kazuni starting off with a strike from her broom. Ayaka blocks the attack and uses her eyes to turn Kazuni to stone. is grabbed by the collar and pushed to the ground. Despite Ayaka managing to turn Kazumi into a stone statue, she stands up and starts walking away, apologizing to her. However, she gets kicked from behind as Kazumi breaks through the stone seal with sheer willpower. Kazumi grabs Ayaka by the collar and questions whether she thinks a simple stone seal can bring her down. She points out that Ayaka seems out of breath after just one hit, explaining that combining with Medusa has weakened her invincibility with Evermillion, as she now hates impurity. Kazumi warns Ayaka to prepare for a beatdown, but Hanoka uses his power to shift places with her and ends up taking the punch himself. Sometime later, he wakes up tightly confined inside a prison cell alongside Ayaka. Ayaka attempts to burn the metal bars away, but her efforts prove useless. She explains that they are inside one of her mother's punishment chambers, and their fusion with Medusa has already been undone. This turns out to be the worst case scenario, as Medusa could be getting interrogated right now and their secret would be exposed. Ayaka reveals that her mother once told her that, no matter what happens, even if she dies, she must not let Hanoka's seals get broken. As long as the seals were intact, their protection at the school was guaranteed. However, now that the seals are gone, Hanoka has become a threat. Ayaka then states that the only way out of their predicament is to defeat her mother. She explains that her mother is genuinely sportsmanlike, and if they manage to defeat her, she would likely join their side. Hanoka recalls their previous encounters with Kazumi and wonders how exactly they can achieve such a feat. However, Ayaka assures him that there's a way out, and it involves his own power. Meanwhile, back at the school, Kazumi is enjoying a game of shogi with Kronwar. When she inquires about Medusa, Kazumi expresses her initial excitement about torturing the Snake Lady. However, some witches from the Rothenburg workshop arrived, presenting official orders from the headquarters, and requested custody of Medusa. Consequently, Kazumi had to give up on her. While drinking her tea angrily and contemplating the missed opportunity for fun with Medusa, the school building suddenly explodes. Looking down, Kazumi sees Ayaka and Hanoka standing on top of the rubble outside their prison. She flies out and scolds Ayaka for repeatedly destroying buildings. Ayaka, undeterred, points her sword at Kazumi, declaring her intention to defeat her. Kazumi questions why they have to fight and instructs Ayaka to wear her uniform and come down. She reprimands them for breaking out of their prison and tells them to go home for the day, with a reminder that they will have to help clean up the mess the next day. Ayaka and Hanoka walk back home, realizing that Kazumi didn't discover the secret about the seals after all. They decide that all's well that ends well. That night, Hanoka and Ayaka sleep together, and I know what you think, guys, but nothing happens between them. They are just resting. Due to being close to Ayaka, Hanoka has a strange dream that shows him memories of Ayaka's past. It takes him back to the time when Kazumi hired the daughters of two witches to be friends with her daughter and look after her. These two students, Ken and Toko, quickly become the first members of Ayaka's simping squad, taking the third seat and vice president positions in the student council. Over the course of the year, they become close to Ayaka, realizing that she doesn't know how to interact with others normally. However, they also recognize her outstanding charm, academic prowess, and athletic abilities. As they teach her and spend time with her, they start admiring her a lot and fall in love with her personality. This leads to the formation of a whole group of admirers, eventually contributing to her appointment as the princess. Then, one day, Ayaka encounters Hanoka walking past her alongside his sister. This chance meeting sparks something within her, leading her to approach her mother. Ayaka tells Kazumi that she has finally found the one she is destined to protect with her life. This moment marks the beginning of Ayaka's journey as Hanoka's protector. The next morning, Kazumi wakes up and heads to the kitchen, wondering what happened yesterday. As she opens the door, she is surprised to find their dining table filled with Team Tampopo rocket. Kazumi let them go since she was only interested in Medusa, and with nowhere else to go, they decided to stay at Ayaka's house. However, Kazumi isn't too thrilled about it. After getting ready, Kazumi walks up to Hanoka's room to wake him up and once again runs into Ayaka on top of him, this time in a nurse outfit. Ayaka claims she is checking the condition of his seals. With that, they all walk to their school after having breakfast. Everything seems to have gone back to normal, with Hanoka's locker filled with hate mail and requests to quit the student council. His usual day involves being the class dumbass and getting answers wrong, even after trying. During lunchtime, Hanoka and Ayaka walk down to the cafeteria but suddenly hear the noise of broken glass. They rush to the scene and find some students breaking everything, turning the whole school into a lawless zone. Students are running around on motorcycles and engaging in various disruptive activities. Hanoka asks what's going on, and Ayaka remarks that it looks like a rebellion. Tampopo chimes in, blaming Hanoka as the student council president for the chaos. Suddenly, they see Tauko being pushed to the ground by a girl named Rinon. Rinon hands Hanoka a letter instructing him, as the student council president, to come to the gym alone at 2:30 p.m. The letter doesn't give off a friendly vibe, and Tauko reveals that during her night shift, she saw the former student council president walking to the bar alongside Rin. The former president claimed that Hanoka took her position by force and is now ruling the school like a tyrant. Hanoka signals Toko to meet after school, and later during gym class, Ayaka reveals that Rinnan is one of the 5 witches tasked with protecting and patrolling the school. Rinnan earned the nickname Bear Killer because she once strangled a tiger named Lucky Bear that escaped from the zoo with her bare hands. About 2 months ago, Rinnan was suspended from the school for causing trouble. During lunchtime, Hanoka expresses concern about the property damage, expecting the headmistress to be angry. Tampopo, however, informs him that she ran into Cronwar Wire earlier in the hallway. It appears that the headmistress is out of town for some business and has left Cronwar in charge for the day, emphasizing that she doesn't give a fuck about what happens to the school. At 2:30, Hanoka decides to walk to the gym alone, taking advice from Makaka on how Rinnan fights. Upon entering the building, he notices that the court is transformed into a makeshift ring, with a massive crowd of students gathered around, cheering them on. Hanoka attempts to talk his way out of the situation, but Rinnan accuses him of mistreating her best friend and trying to socially disgrace her. She lands a straight punch on his face, sending him to the ground. Despite getting back up, Rinnan insists on punishing him in front of the entire school. She turns him into a punching bag, hitting him left and right until he falls over again. Afterward, she grabs him by his tie, intending to finish him off with her signature punch. However, Hanoka has been waiting for this moment, thanks to Ayaka's advice before walking in. He follows her guidance, using his power to gain a stat boost, pushing her back to the ground, and ending up on top of her. He then contemplated hitting her to put an end to the madness but decided against it, embracing the values of chivalry. Suddenly, the lights turned off and Ayaka jumped down alongside Tampopo and her gang. Rinnan tried to fight back with her punches, but Ayaka swiftly defeated her with a single hit to her face. Ayaka then took the other girls with her and made them hold Hanoka in a victory pose while wearing concealing robes. She turned the lights back on, creating the illusion that Hanoka had defeated Rinnan. It was revealed that Ayaka had planned all of this a week before with the former president. The agreement was that Rinnan would be allowed back into the student council if she helped make Hanoka popular. While the plan went a little overboard in making Rinnan angry at Hanoka, the results were great, and he is now considered as the Batman who defeated the Bear Killer. A few days later, Ayaka takes Hanoka to the top of a very tall building and declares that she will finally train him to fight with his magic. Wondering about the change of heart, as she had previously refused to teach him due to the potential dangers, Hanoka questions her motives. Ayaka explains that she knows he's been secretly training and keeping secrets from her, which she doesn't appreciate. Following this revelation, she summons a fire familiar and instructs Hanoka to use his magic to fight against it. The familiar shoots a fire breath, causing Hanoka to fall back on his rear. Ayaka then urges him to summon his own familiar, but he responds with a perplexed expression, asking her how. The familiar starts attacking him, leading to an injury on his elbow. Ayaka immediately stops everything, rushing to his side and asking if he is fine. Hanoka stands up, pushes her back, and insists that he needs her to be a tough teacher so he can learn properly. Ayaka looks at him for a moment before picking him up and tossing him off the building. She challenges him to summon a familiar that can fly or face the consequences. As Hanoka falls, he gets attacked by the fire familiar, and Ayaka follows on her broom. Hanoka reflects on what is most important to him, and just before crashing down, he remembers the dream about Ayaka in her swimsuit and nurse costume. In a surprising turn of events, he summons a giant avatar in the form of Ayaka in her nursing outfit, proving his status as a true man of culture. The avatar punches the building, revealing Kairu-Sensei having tea with Cronwar. Ayaka acknowledges the powerful magic used, questions how it was done without breaking the second seal, and asks about Kazane's whereabouts as she left Cronwar in charge. The atmosphere is described as boring without Kazane. Ayaka takes Hanoka back home as he falls asleep after using a considerable amount of magic. Meanwhile, Kazan investigates an ancient exploding rune in an underground tunnel. Rinnan approaches Kazan, revealing that Toko informed her of her location. Rinnan explains that a witch claiming to be the messenger of the tower instructed them to deliver a message to Kazan, stating that she has taken everyone in the city hostage. 1 week later, Akka and Hanoka go to school for their exams while Kazane is still out. She encounters the messenger of the tower, who turns out to be a witch named Weekend. Kazane acknowledges her awareness of the bomb and assumes Weekend is there to negotiate for custody of Hanoka. However, Weekend clarifies that she isn't there to negotiate. She explains the protective barrier over the town, powered by Kazane's magic, which shields the residents from harm. Weekend suggests that if everyone in the town were to explode simultaneously, it would deplete Kazane's magic pool, allowing her to capture Hanoka without interference. Weekend, the witch behind the scheme, activates the numerous ancient rune bombs placed throughout the city simultaneously. As a result, the entire city is reduced to ruins. True to Weekend's prediction, no residents are harmed thanks to Kazane's protective barrier, but Kazane herself is left incapacitated, having depleted her entire mana pool. Weekend reveals that her plan involved manipulating Medusa and Cronnoir Wire as well. With Kazane out of the picture, Weekend intends to take advantage of the situation and play with her students. Kazane is subsequently locked up in a cell, with Weekend confident that it will take at least a week for Kazane to regain her mana. This time frame aligns with her plan to capture Hanoka without any interference. Meanwhile, back at the school, Ayaka notices the explosions going off and grabs Hanoka, rushing to the underground workshop for the witches. Down there, they encounter Kasumi, who rushes to her brother and hugs him. They are greeted by Tauko, Rina, and a couple of other witches tasked with protecting the school, including their leader Natsume and a cat familiar called Atori. Hanoka asks them about what's going on, and they say they'll fill them in. However, Natsume suddenly takes out a gun and uses American gun-style sleeping bullets, putting Ayaka to sleep by shooting Hanoka. Kasumi tries to defend them, but Rina knocks her out with a single hit. She then tells Hanoka that they must seal him until they know where Kazane is and what the enemy wants. Hanoka decides to understand the situation for once and follows them to an underground confinement cell alongside Ayaka. While inside, he notices the ceiling is too high but open to let some fresh air in. He tries to fly up to it using his broom but can't use his magic for some reason. Just then, Ayaka also wakes up and says that she was careless, and all this must mean that her mother was defeated. At that moment, Atori walks up to the ceiling and falls down from the open roof, projecting a hologram showing Weekend. Weekend says that she finally found him and that she will be on her way to get her new pet, Hanoka. After looking at her face, Ayaka destroys the Tori, creating an explosion that breaks the wall behind them. She says that they will escape and defeat Weekend, and for now, they can't use any magic because of the city being in ruins. After that, they climb a long staircase for 2 hours to get out of a tunnel and reach a mountain outside of town. When they emerge, they see a terrible sight. The whole town is destroyed and on fire. The person with them loses their mind, panics, and blames themselves for the destruction, thinking everyone is dead, including their mom. However, Ayaka remains calm and tells them to take responsibility. She explains that nobody is actually dead because there's an old tradition. When a workshop is established, the leader makes a contract with the heart of the city. This creates a strong barrier that protects non-witches. In situations where regular people might get hurt, the city uses the magic from the contractor to shield and safeguard them. Basically, the city relies on the magic of workshop witches to fix any damage caused by magic. Currently, the city is in ruins and the contractor is missing. Without a new contract, no workshop witch can use magic. So, their first goal is to go to the city center and make someone new the contractor, allowing workshop witches to fight back. Meanwhile, Natsume and the others figure out that all civilians are safe and asleep in a secure place. However, the headmistress is captured by the enemy, and no workshop witch can use magic due to the city's condition. It will take days for any help to arrive. Additionally, many workshop witches are missing after the explosions. Suddenly, one of the missing workshop witches shows up with time bombs strapped to her. She reveals that Weekend has captured several of them and is using them as leverage to force the surrender of Hanoka. They have half an hour to meet her demands, or else they will all face a dangerous situation. Meanwhile, Kasumi teams up with Tanpopo and her gang to keep an eye on Weekend. Weekend is standing on the school grounds surrounded by workshop witches strapped with time bombs. Tanpopo asks Kasumi what she wants them to do, and Kasumi responds that currently they are the only witches able to use magic. She assures them that they will have to prove their worth if they want to stay in her house. Back in the tunnel to the heart of the city, Ayaka and Hanoka continue walking forward when they are confronted by one of Weekend's companions named Al. She uses her magic to create a stone golem and pounds both Ayaka and Hanoka into the ground with her massive rock arms. Al then grabs Ayaka and attempts to deliver a finishing blow. However, Ayaka surprises her by jumping up and simply kicking her in the face. Al initially believes that a normal kick wouldn't break through her rock armor, but it turns out that Ayaka is powerful regardless of her magic, and they continue walking forward. Back at the underground workshop, Natsume attempts to defuse the bombs manually, but with only 18 minutes left, they decide to confront Weekend directly. At the same time, Cronnoir wakes up in her room and discovers the entire town in ruins. She questions her partner about the situation, and he explains that Weekend, a witch, caused the destruction after receiving information about Hanoka. Kronwar realizes that Weekend must have defeated Kazan and is determined not to let someone strong enough to defeat Kazan escape without a fight. Meanwhile, Natsume and the others approach Weekend and urge her to surrender. Weekend, however, reveals that in less than 12 minutes, they will all die due to the bombs. She suggests they hand over whatever she wants if they want to live a bit longer. Despite claiming to be weak, Weekend warns that even if they defeat her, they won't be able to stop the bombs. Hearing this, Kasumi wonders if Weekend is just a negotiator and the real person controlling the bombs is someone else. With that suspicion, Kasumi rushes into the building to find the partner who might be controlling the bombs. On the other hand, Hanoka walks up to the heart of the city and follows Ayaka's instructions to form a contract with the city. With only a few minutes left before the bombs explode, Renan and the others start running towards Weekend with determination. Just as they feel their magic returning, Hanoka successfully forms a contract with the city. They quickly dismantle all the bombs and subdue Weekend. They take her to a magical sealing cell, but Weekend surprises them by using physical hand grenades within the seal, breaking free and knocking them all out with the explosion. Weekend protects herself with an iron armor concealed under her clothes. She then reunites with her companion, setting off the remaining bombs and causing significant harm to workshop witches. She calls out to Hanoka, urging him to come and save them if he can. Thanks to his contract, Hanoka hears her voice and witnesses the chaos. Despite Ayaka's concerns, Hanoka decides to use his powers to confront Weekend. However, Ayaka intervenes, knocking him down with a headbutt and declaring that she will handle the situation herself. On the flip side, Kasumi and the others locate Weekend's companion and engage in a battle with them. Meanwhile, Kronwar captures Al and compels her to reveal Weekend's plan and whereabouts by making her disclose the information. After knocking Hanoka out, Ayaka takes him to the school's nurse's office and lets him rest on a bed. While resting, Hanoka has a dream about some past memories involving his and Ayaka's mother. However, just as he's about to uncover important details, Kaiō Sensei appears in his dream and pulls him into another dimension, much like before. Kaiō Sensei informs him that this is a special realm where the memories of everyone in the town are stored. As the new contractor of the city, instead of having his own dreams, Hanoka comes to this realm. Kaiō Sensei takes him down an elevator and explains that during times of crisis, they evacuate all the non-witch civilians of the city to this dimension. These memories are stored as stars in the sky of this realm. Once the town is restored to normal, they will release these memories after erasing and editing them so that people don't remember anything about the incident. Hanoka asks about the memory erasing process, and Kaiō Sensei reveals that, as a member of the Mikage family, it is his responsibility to erase and edit the memories of everyone in the town to keep their existence a secret. Meanwhile, Kasumi is engaged in a battle with Weekend's partner, who possesses a copy magic allowing him to replicate the magic of their opponents. The fight takes on, with Kazumi's pink bear titan facing off against their black bear titan. Their duel is fierce, smashing each other's heads like monstrous titans. Kasumi seems to have the upper hand initially. However, both combatants stand back up and continue their intense fighting, inadvertently causing destruction to a part of the school building where Tanpopo and the others are located. Kasumi uses her bear to rescue one of them, but this provides an opening for the enemy to knock her back, making it appear like they might win. Suddenly, Medusa arrives in her attractive human form and turns the enemy into stone. Afterward, she scolds her students, stating that she must punish them for struggling against such a weak opponent. Medusa then grabs her students and flees, with the Rothenburg witches chasing after them. Back at the nurse's office, Atori walks in and inquires about Hanoka's condition. Ayaka informs her that he has a high fever due to using his magic to form a contract with the town. Atori mentions that she completed her mission as requested and shares information about Kronwar hunting down tower witches in the city. She also emphasizes that it's not Ayaka's responsibility to worry about Hanoka. Ayaka expresses her gratitude and asks Atori to stay with Hanoka while she goes out to confront Weekend and put an end to the chaos. Ayaka then requests her sword and flies off to the church, where Weekend is waiting for her. Upon arrival, Ayaka immediately lunges forward to attack, but she is pushed back midair by an explosion. Weekend explains that unlike Ayaka and Kazan, she doesn't possess extraordinary or overpowered abilities in her arsenal. That's why she took years to prepare bombs and strategically place them throughout the city, giving her the advantage to strike anywhere, anytime. She claims that Ayaka doesn't stand a chance against her. Despite the odds, they continue their intense fight. Weekend triggers an explosion, causing the ceiling to collapse over Ayaka. Although injured, Ayaka activates her fire magic, allowing her to emerge from the debris. The battle rages on, and Ayaka manages to narrowly defeat Weekend in close combat. However, she is blasted back by an explosion, and Weekend reveals a group of massive Mana dolls, using them to launch a counterattack against Ayaka. Back at the school, Hanoka and Kiro are ambushed by one of Lean's companions. In response, Kaiō uses his magic to transport Hanoka back to the real world. Upon waking up, Hanoka speaks with Hattori about Ayaka, but she insists he goes back to bed due to his high fever. At that moment, Hattori receives a call from Kairu, who informs her that Weekend has planted a massive time bomb inside the magical realm. To prevent everyone evacuated there from dying, they must defeat Weekend to disarm the bomb. Hattori decides to assist Hanoka and takes him to where Ayaka is. They arrive just in time to witness Ayaka lying defeated on the floor. Hanoka takes her in his arms, urging her to realize that there's a bomb threatening everyone's lives. He implores her to use his powers, and Ayaka complies, overpowering Weekend. She demands the bomb switch from Weekend, but Weekend claims it's already too late and triggers the bomb, causing everyone in the realm to perish. Undeterred, Hanoka rises and attempts to harness Evemillion's powers once again, determined to find a way to save everyone. Ayaka tries to stop Hanoka, but he suddenly feels dizzy and collapses, unconscious. In his dream, he encounters Evemillion, who scolds him for returning despite advising him not to find himself in situations relying on her powers. Evemillion understands his desire to restore all the lives and buildings lost during this period. She mentions that such a significant wish requires a comparable compensation. When Hanoka asks what he can offer in return, she suggests his life. However, she reminds him that if she takes his life by contract, Ayaka will die as well. After contemplating for a moment, Hanoka acknowledges that there seems to be no other choice. He forms a contract with Evemillion, agreeing to sacrifice his life to bring everyone back. He activates her powers at full force, and miraculously, everything begins restoring back to normal. The entire town is rejuvenated, and everyone returns to their normal lives as if the bomb never exploded. Ayaka hugs Hanoka, and he apologizes for the decision to sacrifice his life, along with Ayaka's, to make the restoration happen. Ayaka reassures him, expressing that she won't let him die so easily. She stands up, calling Evermillion's name, and declares that she will offer her own life instead. Suddenly, Ayaka's magical form disappears, and she collapses on the ground unconscious. Before Hanoka can process Ayaka's sacrifice, he is stabbed in the back by Weekend, who also got restored thanks to his wish earlier. Weekend informs him that he ruined her plan, and now she only has a knife left. She taunts him, suggesting he shouldn't cry for Ayaka as he can go meet her in the afterlife. Hanoka gathers his strength, pushes the knife out of his back, and retaliates by punching Weekend to the ground. Hanoka stands over her with the knife and drives it into the ground beside her head. He declares that he is done devaluing lives and asserts that no matter how many evil schemes she uses to make his life miserable, he will always defeat her and put an end to her plans. After this heroic speech, he falls on top of her due to his wound. Weekend, acknowledging his resilience, decides to spare him, instructing her companion to patch him up. She remarks that they still have a few days left before Weekend and Kazane return. After their encounter, they head out to their hideout but are unexpectedly met by Kronwar and her Kroko companion. They invite to join them for a walk, and while everyone else is back and happy, Hanoka is overcome with sorrow, crying over Ayaka's lifeless body. At that moment, Hattori walks in and receives a call from Kairu, who informs them that everything is now good and they have successfully completed their mission. However, he is too saddened by Ayaka's condition to care about the good news. When Hanoka recounts everything that happened, Kairu senses something off about it. Normally, only the contractors can fulfill the demands of the contract, meaning Ayaka shouldn't have been able to give her life up in exchange for his. Additionally, Hanoka notices something strange with Ayaka's body. Although she's not breathing, her body is still warm. Kairu proposes a solution. He suggests trying something that might bring Ayaka back. He instructs Hattori to create a special magic circle and place Ayaka inside it. Kairu explains that Ayaka might be in this state because she forcefully ended their contract. To bring her back, he needs to form a contract with her again. He tells Hanoka to cut his hand slightly, drop some blood on Ayaka's chest, and then kiss her. Although kissing proves to be the more challenging part for Hanoka, he manages to plant a kiss on Ayaka's forehead. After some time, Ayaka miraculously comes back to life, starting to breathe again. After bringing Ayaka back to life, Hanoka goes back into his dream world to talk to Evermillion alongside Kairu. He asks her about what happened, and she reveals the contract she made with Ayaka when they were kids. According to the contract, if Ayaka were to die or ask for Evermillion's help, she would release the contract between them, allowing Hanoka to use his own power that he uses to keep Evermillion alive. It turns out that Hanoka restored everything on his own, and once Ayaka broke their contract, she didn't need to give him any of her power. Consequently, their agreement was called off. Meanwhile, Kronwar challenges Weekend to a one-on-one duel and utterly destroys her, expressing disappointment in her strength. She had hoped for a formidable opponent but found Weekend to be much weaker than expected. Kronwar contemplates torturing her but is interrupted by the arrival of Kazane. Kazane declares that, for this incident, she wants custody of the villain and she cannot let Kronwar have her. Weekend questions how Kazane is present, as it should take at least 5 more days for her to recover her mana. However, Cronnoir reveals that her calculations were off, and it took only 20 hours for Kazane to recover all her magic. After Weekend questions why Kazane didn't intervene earlier, Kazane explains that she wanted the kids to have some fun, so she decided not to interfere. Now, she's there to clean up the mess they made. They both face off against each other, and it becomes apparent that they are probably the strongest individuals in the show so far. The battle between Kazane and Cronnoir lasts only a few minutes, during which they exchange intense blows. As expected, Kazane emerges victorious. The next morning, Hanoka wakes up in his bed, and Ayaka greets him good morning. She tells him to get ready for school. On their way, Hanoka asks if she is fine, and Ayaka responds that it will take some time for her magic powers to recover, but she's fine even without them. Later, they are ambushed by Team Tempo Rocket, who attempt their usual SH-tick of capturing Hanoka. However, Ayaka shows them that she is still the main character of this world, even without magic. She grabs Tampopo and Mei by their skulls and nearly crushes them with her grip. The two apologize for their rude behavior, and everything returns to normal. That's it for this video. Watch the following video, and I'll catch you in the next one.